Welcome back to another episode of the DailyFlip podcast. I'm your host, Alex, and today we're going to be talking about circular financing. Wait, what? Alex, you're talking about AI? Nope. Are you talking about the largest firms on Wall Street? Nope. I'm talking about another circular financing scheme, and yeah, you're going to absolutely love it, I assure you. But before we get into the article, before we get into this practice that's probably going to cause a whole bunch of companies to go to zero, let's ask the daily debate. Let's ask the question: do we live in a world where this is simply the way of things now? And maybe in your mind, it's not a bad thing. Maybe companies investing in one another, companies that have equities in one another, it's not necessarily harmful to the economy. Maybe there's a concrete producer and a steel producer, and they both rely on each other's business, and they want to benefit from their cooperation as well as they want to benefit from the business that falls outside of the scope that they do together. They invest in one another. Maybe that's a good thing. And maybe you're right, maybe you're wrong. Maybe that causes a whole bunch of issues when it comes to the extra risk that these companies are taking on. But the cases that we're going to be talking about are even worse than that. And honestly, some pretty weird stuff has gone on with some VC firms, or private equity firms more accurately. So, with that, let's jump back. We're going to actually go into the article. Put your comment down there in the comment section. I want to hear what you have to say about the question. So, with that, from the New York Times, headline reads: Investors warn of rot in private equity as funds strike circular deals. And the idea of a circular deal has become much more prominent nowadays because we've seen lots of trading back and forth between AI companies and their suppliers. We've seen pledges of large investments into these companies for equity deals. We've seen, in doing so, that the companies both have their valuations, their stock prices go up, and therefore they make back that money, that supposed investment, practically immediately. They become liquid, or at least have a surplus of cash in theory. Now, it's all on paper, of course, in order to make some investment. Well, speaking about being on paper, speaking about having these deals just change the underlying valuation in the books rather than in the real world, this is a practice that seems, if not had been going on and now it's just getting attention drawn to it, is also happening in private equity. Quote, private equity firms have been struggling to deliver on their core business model of taking on debt, buying companies, and selling them for profit. Several years of high interest rates have made it too expensive for many would-be buyers to purchase companies with debt. And private equity firms are contending with a backlog of more than 31,000 unsold companies. Now, but you may be thinking, wow, that's a lot of extra risk on the books. That's a lot of companies that you don't know if they're going to succeed or not. Maybe you can't sell them because they can't succeed, or maybe you can't sell them or don't want to sell them because they will succeed. That's a really hard metric to have. And of course, private equity has valuations and research and data on all the different companies that they own. So I'm sure they have some winners and losers, and they'll probably strip the losers of all the things that matter, sell them off, and allow the winners to go on and be sold, or even continue to keep the investment and put it into a different fund. And on part of that, you're right, and on the other one, you're wrong. You want to guess which one it is? Yeah, the losers. Not all losers get stripped away. There's a tool called a continuation vehicle. I'll read from the article here. It's literally the paragraph below. Quote, continuation vehicles are providing a short-term solution by allowing firms to sell the companies to themselves, book a paper gain, and wait for interest rates to improve. Let's walk back through that very quickly. They say, hey, we have a company that's not doing great or is doing amazing, either one. In the vehicle that we have it in currently, in fund number 1, and now we're gonna move it over to fund number 2. And because it is technically a moving from one to the other, it's technically a sale, we're going to say, well, the valuation we bought it in fund 1 was this, and when we're selling it, it's this, and boom, look at that gain. And yet, when it goes over to the other fund, they still have the underlying debt. They still have the asset itself, which is fine. It's not like that's a bad thing. But what I'm implying is, what actually changes? The book value. The book value changes. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. We have tools and products and different vehicles, and I mean this most literally, in large scale companies that have vehicle fleets, they depreciate their vehicles. They take the book value of the item when they bought it, they add depreciation, maybe straight line, maybe they use a different formula, and they say, hey, it's not actually worth as much as it was before, because as an asset gets older, it's going to lose value. Fair enough. So there are already models, and there's already a baseline principle of depreciation that says it's okay to affect the book value. It's okay to change that. So why is that different in this case? Well, one, because they put in almost all the money, that funded this change, so they have extra debts and losses that go into making the company more valuable, but also because it's not changing hands. It's not actually going from one person to another. They're not actually selling it, they're transferring it. And in doing this, they actually lie, or at least change the way that it is conceived. Rather than being a gain from selling companies on the books, what I would argue is it needs to be net appreciation, or there needs to be a different metric that they use to signify that we have gained this much, the value of our assets has gained this much. Oh wait, there already are metrics for that. They already track the amount of in gain, or at least improvement in their assets. But when you make a claim that we're selling it for more money and that this is undisputed gains, it feels a little bit scummy. Though, of course, the people that are invested in these private funds are able to get away with it because they have a really, and I'm putting air quotes around this next statement, they have a robust approval and thorough third-party analysis, which is, when they don't just put it in nice fancy words, it's essentially saying the people who own the company, the pension funds, the employment funds, whoever is investing in this company, they have to sign off on it transferring from one to the other. They have to say, hey, I'm going to stay in or I'm going to get out, because it's moving funds, obviously. So they can't just say, oh, well, we're going to keep you all in there and you're just going to go to the exact same vehicle. No, they're putting them somewhere else. So they have to go to them and say, hey guys, we're moving it over to this continuation fund. We're probably going to keep it on the books for a little bit longer. Do you want to stay in? A lot of people roll their investment over. Some people don't. And one of the examples, you have multiple states, 3 states, New York, then you had Connecticut, and I believe you had Nevada. And they all said, hey, yeah, we're going to stay on this one deal. And Pennsylvania said, I'm going to get out while the money is good, because I don't understand why you're putting it in this continuation vehicle. This continuation vehicle, for the most part, there's actually plenty of funds. So the one company they talk about here is Clear Lake, and they have created so many continuation funds. I believe it's about 5 that they list here, or at least that they have data for what the average returns are on them, that it feels as though they just can't get some items off the books. They want to get a simple gain on there, once again, on the books. In reality, they already have appreciated that gain. They already have had the benefit of the gain, because guess what? Assets under management, they already see that in their data. And then they say, hey, we want to keep it a little bit longer. We can't necessarily sell it off. We're going to move it over into a continuation fund. And there's probably multiple layers to this here. We have no inside information from Clear Lake that is listed here as to their motivation for doing so, though the reason seems pretty obvious, which is, hey, we want to make sure that we're not weighing down our initial fund. We don't want our returns to be lowered by something that hasn't been able to sell yet, whether that's because it's hard to sell in a market that has really high interest rates and somebody else has to take on that debt, whether or not it's because it's a great company and we want to keep it. Whatever the reasonings may be, they're taking a risk by keeping these companies on, and therefore they do not want it to affect the main funds, and they want to put it in another place that they can say, this is our long-term bet, which is allowing for a little bit more risk in the eyes of the investors there, at least for most people. If your time horizon is a very long time, this is not financial advice, but if you talk to a lot of people, your risk profile can be a lot higher if your time horizon is a lot longer. And therefore, when you have a continuation fund, it sounds like it's going to continue on forever. Oh, we're just allowing this asset to keep on cooking, We're putting in a little bit of extra money, we're tossing it around on the stove, and maybe in 5 years, it'll be a really great meal that we'll be able to toss out there and sell. Or maybe it'll be a company that's finally worth selling for the parts and pieces. Maybe it'll actually be we will be able to sell it for parts. It feels endlessly scummy. And that's not to say that they don't have a great business practice going on, that they're making money for their people. That can all be true. And yet, when they put into these continuation funds, they also go to other private equity funds. They also go to other financial institutions in general and say, hey, you guys want to help float this? You want to actually invest here? We had some people back out. You want to help on up? And this is the part that feels extremely, extremely like the NVIDIA and OpenAI, the AMD and OpenAI, the Microsoft and NVIDIA and AMD and OpenAI, and the Amazon and NVIDIA and OpenAI and Microsoft deals. All of these different deals where they're investing in one another. If everybody has these continuation vehicles and they continue, yes, I know, back-to-back words there that might seem in conflict, continue to have this practice where they put their riskier assets on those books and constantly have other VC firms come in as well as putting in their own money in order to make sure that these funds and these companies that they have bought are able to stay afloat, all while waiting for a hypothetical sell date. It kind of reminds me of what happened with Silicon Bank, where they had a whole bunch of, I believe it was treasury yields, and the return on them was projected to be this, and they said, hey, we can keep it on the books as long as this is the case, and those projections went down, and they had to sell them off. If they did, or they had them on the books, it looked like a loss, but as long as they didn't sell those assets, they weren't a loss yet. Just like they sold the assets to another fund so they could up the book gain, up the book value of it. If you don't sell it at that point, even if it's losing, it still withholds that book value. But there's going to come a date where the bells stop ringing, where the interest rates do fall, where it doesn't look like you'll be able to recoup your money in the long term, where you're not able to bet on the future, and you have to sell off. And when that moment comes, and they are all looking at each other saying, whoa, but we didn't think, but no, but we're just waiting for everything. Everybody's going to be fighting for that last chair, and we'll see what private equity firm comes out on top. So with that, if you want to read the entire article, it will be linked in the description below, that like and subscribe button. Also down there, if you want to find the podcast on Spotify, Pocket Cast, Podvine, or Apple Podcasts, the links are down there. And if you want to follow the Twitter handle at Your Daily Flip, where I post links to these episodes on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and the 6 and 6 segment, which is 6 stories from around the world in 6 minutes or less, on Tuesday and Thursday. Also, I am a really bad person because I forgot to say Merry Christmas Eve. Happy Christmas Eve. Tomorrow is Christmas, so if you're not back tomorrow, Merry Christmas. And if you're here a year on and you're saying, why is he saying this? It's not happening yet. It's not even close to Christmas. If you're listening 6 months later, well, then happy good time of year for you. Or maybe you could just say Merry Christmas and hope for the next one that you'll be able to see over the horizon at this point, because we're always approaching Christmas, except on Christmas Day itself. So, with that said, there's only one more thing to say. Stay safe. Don't die.